It's time for one last ride. Again. Fast X is a 2023 film that tells a story when the Toretto family is targeted by a ghost from their past, and it's the first part of the finale of this franchise. I saw the film last night, and to give a little bit of context on where I stand with this franchise and what I think about these movies, I essentially grew up with these films, with the first and the second one being two of my favorite films as a child. So my opinions will probably vary from someone who has less nostalgia and a soft spot for this franchise and these characters. So, with that in mind, let's jump right into the positives. The first positive for this film I have is the action. For me, overall it felt more realistic and a lot more grounded than the past few films that we've gotten in this franchise. And although some computer effects and CGI are noticeable in some areas with the cars where they obviously couldn't do some stunts, overall it is well executed and well shot, with a lot of energetic camera movements and giving the action a kinetic feel with the camera constantly moving within the scenes. Some people may find that distracting or as a cheap gimmick to make the film seem more exciting, but for me, it worked. The next positive I have is the comedy element within this film. I felt that the blend of comedy and action worked very well within this film. Now some people may find it annoying, but again, I love all the actors that are involved in this project, so a lot of the quips and the dialogue really worked for me and made me enjoy the experience even more. The final positive I have with this film is the character of Dante, played by Jason Momoa. And this is hands down my favorite villain in this entire franchise, and that's for one simple reason. He does not take himself too seriously. Jason Momoa did a great job with this character. Throughout the film, he is doing all these despicable and evil things, all with a smile on his face. He is enjoying every minute that he makes Dom and his family suffer. And although Jason Momoa does this with a lot of charisma, getting a laugh out of the audience just by his insanity and how maniacal he is, we are constantly reminded that he is an actual threat. Because unlike other villains, he's wanting them to suffer as much as possible. He's not trying to kill Dom from the get-go. We understand clearly that the only reason why Dom and his family are still surviving is because he's letting it happen. He's drawing it out for as long as he can to make them suffer before finally killing them. And that element really made this film work and feel like there's an actual threat. Obviously, a majority of these characters want to make it through the finale. But in the moment, we feel the threat and the danger, and that is real because there's actual sacrifice, there's actual death and danger that happens to the people surrounding these characters. Unlike the previous one where it felt like they were invincible and could practically do anything. And that works in favor for this film because it makes it feel like it's an actual finale. This is the end of the road, all bets are off. Now moving on to the mixed aspects, and for this I only have two. The first one being the splitting up of the team. I think that worked very well. I enjoyed seeing these characters being split up and having to overcome their own obstacles and different subplots. However, it just felt very jarring when we would go from one plot to another, because I'd be very invested in the part of the story with Dom and Dante, and completely forget about all the other subplots. And then so when it cut randomly back to those stories with the other characters, it felt jarring, because, like I said, I was so caught up in this one that I forgot about this one. Now that may be more of a compliment, given the fact that the film immersed me so much into that story, into that plot, but unfortunately I'm just mixed on it right now. The second mixed aspect that I have is a spoiler. So if you'd like to avoid that completely, I suggest you go to this timestamp down below to skip it completely. Alright, so here we go. Now's your warning. 1, 2, 3. Giselle is alive. The reason why I'm mixed on this is because I, one, love her character. She's played very well in the past films and was a big part for 3 to 4 films that she was in. However, I feel like it lessens the journey so much because up to this point, basically, there's been no real loss for Dom and his family because of this death being undone. First you had Letty, then you had Han, then you had Giselle. All these deaths and these impactful moments of grief and heartbreak are all undone, and in the long run seem basically pointless. So that's why it's a mixed aspect, because I'm happy to see her back, I'm happy to see the character again, but it undoes a lot of the grief and hardship that some of these characters went through by her death. Moving on to negatives, and for this I only have 2. The first one being the use of footage and photos from past films. The reason why this is a negative is because it makes absolutely no sense. Because, for instance, there's a part in the film where footage from the first Fast and Furious race is used. And there's photos from these movies where no camera was present, or it'd make absolutely no sense for a camera to be present, like the picture of Dom and Brian in Fast and Furious that we see in the trailer right before they go to Mexico. So I feel like it would have worked better if they used like behind the scenes photos of just the cast and the actors just sitting around talking, rather than using pictures that make no sense within the context of the story, because it's more distracting than anything, at least for me. Again, nitpicky, but what are you gonna do? Now my last negative, and that is the 2-year wait that we had to wait for the second part of the story. So as I mentioned, this is the first part of the basically overall finale. However, the approximate release date for the next film is 2025. Now the reason why this is a negative is because I was perfectly satisfied with how this film left off. And I think it would have worked perfectly fine if we had a film next year rather than 2 years later. Something similar to like what Kill Bill did, or Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, to where you only have a 1-year gap in between these stories. But by spacing out 2 years, I feel like a lot of the excitement will die down and might leave a lot of audience members frustrated when they leave, feeling that they didn't get a full resolution. Overall, I really enjoyed this film, and I had a lot of fun with it. It is not the best film in this franchise by any means whatsoever, but it felt like the finale, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So as always, I thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this new movie, what you liked, what you didn't like, and where do you want the finale of this franchise to go forward from here. I thank you very much for your time, and God bless. Round of applause, we clapping. Hey, I do the dash when I drive. Baby on top, she do the dash when she ride.